3 generations of Holcomb men had run the garage on Avenue Q in Lubbock, Texas. Wayne Holcomb was the third. He was also, by his own quiet count, the last. The garage was a long, low building of cinder block and corrugated steel, painted white sometime during the Reagan administration and never repainted since. Inside, 3 service bays lined up in a row, smelling of motor oil and welding flux, and the particular dust of cars that had been waiting a long time to be remembered. A faded wooden sign above the door read Holcomb Restoration, ESD 1947. The 4 had been hand-painted by Wayne's grandfather, Henry Holcomb, in the year he opened the shop. The other digits were original to the sign maker in Amarillo. On the wall behind the cash register hung a black and white photograph from 1953. In it, Henry Holcomb stood beside a 1949 Ford F1 with a young man in Army fatigues. The young man's name was Carl Vickers. He had been Wayne's great-uncle. Carl had brought the truck home from Korea in pieces, and Henry had put it back together over the course of 6 months without ever sending Carl a bill. Carl had died in a car accident on Route 84 in 1961, but the truck was still in Lubbock somewhere, owned by Carl's grandson, who lived in San Angelo now and called the shop on Christmas Eve every year just to say hello. That was how the garage worked. That had always been how it worked. Wayne was 52 years old, 5 feet 11, and 185 pounds since the heart surgery, which was 30 pounds lighter than he had been the year before. His hands were marked everywhere with 35 years of restoration work, old burned scars from soldering brake lines, a pale ridge along his left thumb from where a torque wrench had slipped in 1998, permanent dark stains under his fingernails that no amount of lava soap had ever fully removed. They were a working man's hands, and the working man they belonged to was tired. He had not been the same kind of tired before the surgery. Before the surgery, tired had meant a long day of physical work that a hot shower and 8 hours of sleep would solve. After the surgery, tired meant something deeper. It meant his body had been opened and stitched and would never quite trust him the same way again. It meant that the things he had done easily for 30 years now required strategy. He had to think about how he stood up from a creeper. He had to think about how he leaned over an engine block. He had to take small breaks between heavy lifts, breaks he disguised as checking the coffee pot or studying a service manual. He had not told Susan how often the breaks were happening. He had not told Diego that he was sometimes dizzy after holding a heavy wrench at arm's length. He arrived at the shop at 7 that morning, the same as every morning. He took his blood thinner and his statin at the kitchen sink with a glass of warm water. His wife, Susan, had already left for her shift at Lubbock Heart Hospital. Their son Ethan, 17 years old and a senior at Lubbock High, was sitting at the kitchen table reading a brochure for the engineering program at Texas A&M University. "Dad," Ethan said, "did you sign the FAFSA forms?" "Last week, son, we're good." Wayne had signed the forms. He had not told Ethan what the forms had shown, that the Holcomb household, after the heart surgery and the slow death of the small restoration market, could not contribute meaningfully to a 4-year degree at any school more expensive than the local community college. Ethan would have to take out the federal maximum in loans. The boy did not know that yet. Wayne kept meaning to find a way to tell him that did not feel like an apology. At the shop, Diego Hernandez was already there, working on a 1972 Ford F-250 that had been sitting in Bay 2 for 3 weeks. Diego was 24, Mexican-American, born and raised in Lubbock. He had been Wayne's apprentice for 4 years. He had a 2-year-old daughter named Sophia and a girlfriend who waited tables at the Cracker Barrel out by the Loop. Diego had not received a paycheck in 2 months. He had not complained. Marcus Reed was sweeping the floor near Bay 3. Marcus was 19, fresh out of Estacado High School, the first member of his family to find work that did not involve fast food. He had been at the shop for 1 year. He had also not been paid in 2 months. He also had not complained. Wayne owed the two of them between back wages and the promised quarterly bonus, $9,600. He had $1,200 in his checking account, a coffee can with $340 in cash above the refrigerator at home, and a credit card that had been at its limit since August. His phone buzzed in his coverall pocket. He looked. It was the billing department at Lubbock Heart Hospital. Third call this week. He let it go to voicemail. He would call them back tomorrow, the same way he had said yesterday and the day before. Diego looked up from the F-250 and walked over. "Boss," Diego said quietly, "Sophia's daycare needs payment by Friday. I know you're tight. I'm not asking for the whole back pay. Just $300. Just for the daycare. "You'll have it tomorrow morning," Wayne said. "Promise." Diego nodded once and went back to the F-250. Wayne walked to his small office at the back of the shop and closed the door. He sat down at the desk that had been his father's and his grandfather's before him. He opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a leather case containing the original set of his father Lloyd's hand tools from 1968. Snap-on wrenches, a Starrett caliper, a small Stanley plane that Lloyd had used to shave wooden glove box doors back into alignment on 50s pickups. The set was worth, to a collector, somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000. Wayne picked up his phone and texted the number of a man in Amarillo who had been asking after the set for 3 years. "Set is available, $1,200 cash. Today only." He put the phone down and waited. Outside in the bays, Diego and Marcus worked. The morning was already getting hot the way West Texas mornings did in November, dry and bright, without any of the kindness in the air that other places had. Wayne closed his eyes and counted to 10 before he opened them again. At 9:47 that morning, a black Cadillac Escalade EV pulled into the gravel lot in front of Holcomb Restoration. It was followed 30 seconds later by a flatbed truck carrying a 1967 Ford F-100 Ranger pickup. The pickup was cream white with a faded green side stripe. The original paint oxidized to a soft, chalky finish from 58 years under the West Texas sun. Wayne knew that truck before the flatbed had finished backing into the lot. A young man stepped out of the Escalade. He was 28 years old, perhaps 5'10" slims, with the kind of carefully maintained physique that comes from a personal trainer and a strict no-carbohydrate diet. He wore a Patagonia vest over a gray Outlier t-shirt, dark Yeezys, and an Apple Watch Ultra that retailed for just under $5,000. He had not slept well in some time. Wayne could see that in the slight puffiness around his eyes, which the young man was trying to disguise with a confident posture that did not quite reach his mouth. "Hi," the young man said. "I'm looking for the owner. I need some mods done." "I'm the owner," Wayne said. "Wayne Holcomb, Tyler Brennan, Shift Pro. I got your name from a Reddit thread about Ford restoration in Texas." He extended his hand quickly without quite making eye contact. Wayne shook it once. Tyler's hand was soft and dry, the hand of a man who typed for a living. Tyler turned to look at the pickup the flatbed had just unloaded. He frowned slightly. He had clearly been disappointed by the truck the first time he had seen it 3 weeks ago in his late grandmother's storage barn outside of Dallas, and he was disappointed by it again now. "So this was my grandfather's truck. He died in November. My grandmother died in March. I inherited this old piece of crap. Don't want to sell it, but I'm not driving it as is." Wayne walked slowly around the truck. He did not touch it yet. He registered, in the way a doctor registers the symptoms of a patient he has known for 30 years, that the front bumper has a small kink in the right corner where Henry Brennan had backed into a mailbox in 1987. That the left rear fender had a 3-inch scratch just above the wheel arch where Wayne himself had welded a patch and clear-coated over the original paint in 1999. That the bed had a rectangular hardness in the left rear corner where Henry had hauled hay bales for the neighbor's horses every autumn for 40 years. The truck was not a piece of crap. The truck was a biography. "What are you thinking?" Wayne said. Tyler started to list. He counted on his fingers. LS3 V8 swap. Modern Chevy crate engine, 376 cubes, 600 horsepower. Matte black paint, full strip and respray. Lower it 4 inches with coilovers. Modern interior, bride seats, Apple CarPlay head unit, bag the bed with air ride, strip all the chrome, black out the trim. Basically take this old man's nostalgia and make it actually drive in 2026. He paused. "How much?" Wayne did not answer for 4 seconds. He walked to the left rear fender of the truck. He placed his hand on the fender just above the wheel arch, where his thumb fell exactly on the 3-inch scratch he had welded in 1999. He had not seen this truck in 11 years. His thumb knew where the scratch was without his eyes having to look. He looked up at Tyler. "I put that scratch there in 99, Wayne said. "Your grandfather hit a deer at dawn. He cried for an hour before he could tell me what happened." He did not wait for a response. He turned and walked back to the F-250 he had been working on before Tyler arrived. Tyler stood in the lot for 30 seconds. He looked at the scratch. He looked at the truck. He looked at the back of Wayne Holcomb walking away from him. For the first time since he had landed at Lubbock Regional Airport that morning, he was not entirely sure what he was doing. He followed Wayne into the shop. "Wait. You knew my grandfather?" Wayne did not turn around. He was wiping a wrench on a shop rag.
"Henry Brennan, Lubbock."
F-100 Ranger 1967. He brought it to my father in 1968 for break-in service. He brought it to me in 1999 for full restoration. He bought new tires from me in 2014. The last time I saw him was August of 2025, 3 months before he passed. He came in for an oil change. Stayed for 2 hours and talked about you. Me? He said you were doing big things in California. He said he was proud. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was lower than it had been a moment before. I missed his funeral. I was in the middle of Series B. Wayne did not respond. He picked up another wrench. He kept working. Tyler did not leave the shop. He walked over to an old workbench near the office door, pushed aside a stack of shop manuals, and sat down on it. He sat there in his Patagonia vest and his $5,000 watch, and he looked at the truck through the open bay door, and he did not move. After about 15 minutes, Diego came over to where Wayne was working and spoke quietly. "Boss, that kid is still out there. You want me to ask him to leave?" "No," Wayne said. "Let him sit." "He needs to." Diego looked at Wayne for a moment, then nodded and went back to work. After a long time, Tyler stood up from the workbench and walked over to where Wayne was working. His voice was different now. Quieter. "Mr. Holcomb, could you look at it? Tell me what you see." Wayne set down the wrench. He looked at Tyler for 3 seconds without expression. Then he walked out to the truck. The first thing Wayne did was nothing. He stood next to the front fender of the F-100 for a full minute and just looked at it. He took in the panel gaps. The way the chrome on the front grille had developed its particular pattern of oxidation along the lower edge. That distinctive Texas pitting that came from 40 years of red caliche dust and humidity from summer thunderstorms. The faded factory pinstripe along the side, hand-applied at the Kansas City assembly plant by a worker whose name no one would ever know, still visible under the chalk of the oxidation. Then he began to walk around the truck slowly, and he began to talk. "Left rear fender," Wayne said. 3-inch scratch with a welded patch underneath. That's mine. November of '99, week before Thanksgiving. Your grandfather had taken your grandmother Christmas shopping in Amarillo. They were coming home on Highway 84 just before sunrise. A white-tailed buck came up out of the median. He didn't have time to brake. He told me afterward that he didn't even think about the truck. He thought about the deer for an hour before he could think about anything else. I welded the patch and clear-coated over the original paint. He didn't want it stripped. He wanted to remember. Tyler did not say anything. He was looking at the scratch. Wayne moved to the rear of the truck, right rear bumper, small kink. Backed into a mailbox in front of the post office on Main Street, summer of 1987. Your grandmother bought him a pair of aviator sunglasses that Christmas and made him promise to look more carefully when he reversed. I have a photograph of him laughing about it. I'll show you in a minute. He moved to the driver's side, opened the door, and pointed at the steering wheel. Wear pattern on the wheel is asymmetric, heavier on the left side, lighter on the right. Your grandmother learned to drive on this truck in 1972, after their second daughter was born. She always gripped the wheel at 10 and 2, but she pulled to the left because she was nervous. She drove this truck for 3 years before she got her own car. That wear pattern is hers, not his. He closed the door and walked to the truck bed. He pointed at the rectangular hardening in the bed liner. Hay bale corner. Every autumn for 40 years, your grandfather hauled hay for the Caldwell place out on Highway 62. He never charged Mr. Caldwell. He just liked to be useful. The Caldwells stopped raising horses in 2018. The corner of the bed is the only thing that remembers. He moved to the front of the truck and lifted the hood. The engine was a 352 cubic inch V8, the Ford Interceptor, 208 horsepower, 315 pound-feet of torque, built at the Cleveland plant in October of 1967. It looked, in spite of 58 years and several thousand quarts of oil, remarkably clean. 352 cubic inch V8, Wayne said. Interceptor, original to the truck. 208 horsepower from the factory, 315 of torque at 2400 RPM. My father rebuilt this engine in 1985 after your grandfather brought it in with a knock at 30,000 miles past the second valve job. I rebuilt it again in 2014, the last time he asked me for full work. This engine has 58 years of Holcomb hands on it, 3 rebuilds. It's not slow. It's family. He pointed at a spot under the valve cover, almost hidden, where a faint pencil mark could just barely be seen. That's my father's handwriting. He wrote it during the '85 rebuild. It says, 352, rebuilt, Lloyd H., June 1985. My father died in 2003. This engine remembers him. I'm not sure I do anymore. Some days I forget what his voice sounded like, but this engine knows. Wayne reached into a small pocket at the back of the engine bay behind the air filter housing, where almost no one ever looked. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. The paper was yellow with age, folded into a tight square no larger than a postage stamp. Your grandfather found this in the same spot when he brought the truck in for the '85 rebuild, Wayne said. He gave it to my father, and my father gave it back to him, and they agreed it belonged in the truck. So my father put it back where they had found it. I left it there in 2014. It's been riding in that spot for 41 years. He unfolded the paper carefully. It was a receipt from the Ford dealership in Dallas, dated April 28, 1968, the day Henry Brennan had picked up the truck for the first time. The dealer had handwritten a note at the bottom to Henry and Sarah. Long roads ahead. Bob Whitaker, manager. Bob Whitaker was the dealer who sold your grandfather the truck. He wrote that on the receipt the day they drove it off the lot. Your grandfather kept it in the engine bay for 58 years. I don't know why. I never asked. Some things you don't ask. Wayne folded the paper back into its small square and placed it carefully into the same hidden pocket behind the air filter. He closed the hood gently. It rides where he kept it. That's the only place it goes. He moved to the carburetor and pointed at a worn spot on the throttle linkage. Holley 2-barrel, original. See that polish mark right there on the linkage? That's where your grandfather's thumb rested every cold morning for 40 years, holding the throttle steady while he turned the key. 40 years of one man's thumb makes a particular shape. You couldn't fake it with sandpaper if you tried. He closed the hood. He looked at Tyler for the first time since he had started walking around the truck. You want me to put an LS3 in this, Wayne said. I won't tell you it's the wrong choice. I'll just tell you what you'd be throwing out. Tyler was not looking at Wayne. He was looking at the truck. His eyes were wet, but he was not crying. He had not let himself cry since the day he had learned his grandmother had died, 4 months after his grandfather, and he had still not gotten on a plane. Wayne walked around to the front of the truck and lay down on a creeper. He slid under the truck. He moved slowly, more slowly than he had moved at 30, but he moved. Tyler crouched down to watch. Wayne took a small flashlight out of his coverall pocket and shone it on the frame rail above his head. The frame was original, painted Ford factory black, slightly red where the paint had thinned over the years. Just above one of the cross members, in pencil in a handwriting that was small and careful and unmistakable, were 6 words. Sarah. First ride home, May 17, 1968. Tyler sat down on the concrete floor of the shop next to the creeper. He stared at the writing. Your grandfather wrote that on the day he picked your grandmother up from St. Joseph's Hospital in Dallas after she gave birth to your father, May 17, 1968. He'd had the truck for 2 weeks. He drove her and the baby home in it. He stopped on the way to write that under the frames so she would never have to see it. He told me about it in 1999, when I had the truck up on the lift and he came in for a Coke from the cooler. He said he'd done it because he wanted the truck to remember the first time it had brought his family home. I told him the truck would remember. I have not told another living person about that writing until this minute. My father was born May 17, 1968, Tyler said. I know, Wayne said. He was born in this truck's first month with the Brennan family. Wayne did not slide out from under the truck. He lay there with his back on the creeper, and his flashlight pointed at the pencil writing his old friend had left 58 years before. He felt his heart give one of the small irregular thumps that the cardiologist had told him to expect for the rest of his life. He breathed slowly. He waited for it to pass. After 30 seconds, he slid out from under the truck and sat up on the creeper, slowly. Diego was watching from the next bay. Diego started to walk over. Wayne held up his hand. I'm fine. Give me a minute. Tyler saw it, the small thump, the held-up hand, the slow recovery. For the first time, Tyler looked at Wayne as a man with a body, not as a craftsman with a service to sell. Mr. Holcomb, Tyler said. Are you all right? I'm fine, son, Wayne said. Just old. He stood up. He walked back into the office. After a moment, Tyler followed. In the office, Wayne walked to a low wooden cabinet under the window. The cabinet had been built by his grandfather, Henry Holcomb, in 1956. Wayne opened the lower door and removed a thick leather-bound photograph album. The leather was cracked at the spine and the corners had been worn to a pale tan. On the front, in gold lettering that had mostly worn away, the cover read, Holcomb Restoration. Customers and Friends, 1968 to 2003. Wayne set the album on the desk and opened it. He turned to a page near the back. He turned the album toward Tyler and pointed at one of the photographs. In the photograph, 3 people stood in front of an open garage bay. The photograph was dated November 1999 in Wayne's father Lloyd's handwriting along the bottom margin. The man in the photograph was Henry Brennan at 58, broad-shouldered with the silver hair he had had since his late 40s and the smile of a man who liked the way his life had turned out. Beside him was Sarah Brennan at 55 in a navy cardigan, her hair already going white at the temples. On Henry's shoulders, held there by Henry's 2 strong hands gripping his ankles, was a small boy of 3. The boy had a Hot Wheels car in one hand and was looking at the camera with a serious expression. Next to Henry stood Wayne Holcomb at 26 in coveralls, looking very young. "That's you," Wayne said. "November 1999. Your grandparents brought you to Lubbock for Thanksgiving. Henry brought the truck in for full restoration. You sat on his shoulders for 3 hours while we talked about engines. You don't remember, you were 3. Tyler looked at the photograph for a long time. Wayne turned the page. The next photograph was from 2003. It showed Henry Brennan, 62 now, standing in the Holcomb shop. He was holding a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil. He had the slightly uncomfortable expression of a man who has driven 4 hours to do something he is not sure how to do. "When my father died in 2003, Wayne said, your grandfather drove 4 hours from Dallas with a casserole that your grandmother had made. He stayed for 2 days. He helped me organize the shop when my mother could not function. He was not family. But he showed up like he was." Wayne turned to the last page in the album, where someone, his mother, before she died, in handwriting that had begun to shake, had pasted a more recent photograph. It was from 2014. Henry, 72, was standing in the bay where the F-100 had just been finished, holding the keys. "Last time he did major work on the truck," Wayne said. "He wanted to keep it ready for the next 50 years. He told me you would inherit it one day. He did not know you would not want it." "I do want it," Tyler said quietly. "I know," Wayne said. "You just didn't know yet." Wayne closed the album. He turned to the desk drawer and pulled out a single folded sheet of pale yellow stationery. The sheet had been folded carefully into thirds. He unfolded it. The handwriting was Sarah Brennan's. Small, careful, sloping slightly to the right, the handwriting of a woman who had been a schoolteacher in Dallas from 1963 until she retired in 1998. The date at the top of the letter was February 14, 2026, 2 weeks before she had died. "Your grandmother sent me this," Wayne said. "I want you to read it." He handed it to Tyler. Tyler began to read. About 4 lines in, he had to sit down in the wooden chair beside the desk. Sarah's letter was as follows. "Wayne, Henry's truck is going to Tyler when I'm gone. Tyler doesn't know it yet, but he won't know what to do with it. He's busy being important in California. If he ever brings it to you, and I think he will, because Henry told him about you 100 times, please don't let him ruin it. Help him understand it. He needs to understand the truck more than I need it to be preserved. He was supposed to come home for Henry's funeral. He didn't. He'll need help becoming the man Henry thought he'd be. The truck is the easiest place to start. Thank you for being a good son to your father. I think Lloyd would be proud, Sarah." Tyler finished reading. He set the letter on the desks in front of him with great care, as if it were a thing that might break if he set it down too hard. He covered his face with his hands. He did not make a sound for a full minute. When he took his hands away, his cheeks were wet. "Mr. Holcomb," he said, "I don't want the mods, I want full restoration. Like it was when he loved it." "That's $48,000, Wayne said. "Period correct everything. Original paint formula, sourced from the same supplier I used in '99. Engine rebuild, but keep the 352. Original interior leather, sourced from the same tannery in Pennsylvania my father used in 1968. 6 months, maybe 7. I'll pay $60,000 today. Plus $20,000 a year retainer to maintain it forever. 48 is the right price, I know. But you deserve more than the right price." Wayne looked at the young man across the desk from him for a long moment. Then he said, "I'll take $48,000 and the retainer. The extra $12,000. Give it to Diego. He has a daughter who needs daycare on Friday." "Done," Tyler said today. That afternoon, Tyler walked out of the shop and into the gravel lot. He stood next to his Cadillac for a long time, looking back at the small white building that had been Holcomb Restoration for 79 years. Then he took out his iPhone, propped it on the hood of the Cadillac, and recorded a 90-second video. He posted it to his Instagram account, which had 230,000 followers. venture capitalists, founders, journalists, and an enormous number of young men who worked at companies that did not yet make a profit. The video was as follows. This is Wayne Holcomb. He runs Holcomb Restoration in Lubbock, Texas. He knows my grandfather's 1967 Ford 100 better than I knew my grandfather. He's been working on this truck for 27 years. 3 generations of his family have run this garage since 1947. He's struggling right now because heart surgery costs money and small restoration shops are dying. I'm an idiot who almost asked him to LS swap a 352 V8 that's been rebuilt by 3 Holcomb men across 2 centuries. He stopped me without anger, without a lecture, just by showing me what I had. If you have an old American truck, an old American car, clock, a radio, anything your grandfather loved, find your Wayne Holcomb. Pay him before he disappears. Save what we forget. Wayne, if you see this, I'm sorry I called your work old man stuff. It's the work that keeps us from being strangers to our own families. Link in comments. He's accepting bookings. By 6 o'clock that evening, the video had 47,000 views. By midnight, 210,000. By the following Monday morning, the Holcomb Restoration Instagram account, which had been quietly maintained by Diego for years and had never had more than 90 followers, had received 180 messages and 31 confirmed restoration bookings, each with a deposit ranging from $5,000 to $15,000. By Monday afternoon, Wayne Holcomb's small Lubbock garage held $180,000 in advance deposits on its books. Tyler did not ask Wayne to thank him. He did not ask anyone to thank him. He flew back to San Francisco that Sunday afternoon and told no one at his company what had happened. He had a 6-month wait on his truck. He had nothing else to ask for. That Sunday evening, Wayne came home from the shop later than usual. Susan was waiting at the kitchen table with 2 plates of pot roast and a quart of iced tea. She had stopped by the bank that afternoon to deposit the cashier's check Tyler had handed Wayne on Saturday morning. She had also called the billing department at the heart hospital and paid the full balance in person. "You should have called me from the bank," Wayne said. He sat down. He looked at the pot roast and felt for the first time in 2 years that he was about to eat dinner without doing math in his head. "I wanted to do it myself," Susan said. "I wanted to walk in there and write the check and watch her stamp it paid. Was it good? It was the best moment of my professional year, and I'm a heart nurse." Wayne laughed. He had not laughed at the kitchen table in a long time. The laugh caught him by surprise. Susan reached across the table and put her hand on his. Ethan came down the stairs in sweatpants and a Texas A&M hoodie that Susan had bought him in October as a hopeful gesture. He sat down at his usual place. "Dad," Ethan said, "Mom's told me about the truck guy, the Instagram thing." "Yeah, is the garage actually going to be okay?" Wayne looked at his son. Ethan was 17 and tall and skinny in the way teenage boys are tall and skinny just before their bodies fill in. He had been preparing himself, Wayne knew, to defer Texas A&M and work at the shop full-time. He had not said it out loud. But Wayne had been watching the boy do that math at the kitchen table for 6 months. "The garage is going to be okay, son," Wayne said. "You go to College Station. Be an engineer. Come home in the summers if you want. The shop will be here." Ethan looked down at his plate. He did not say anything for a moment. When he looked up, his eyes were a little wet. "Okay, Dad," he said. "Okay." Susan's squeezed Wayne's hand under the table. Wayne kept eating. The pot roast was the best he had eaten in years, even though it was the same recipe Susan had made every Sunday since 1998. Some meals taste different when you can finally taste them. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday morning in early December, the shop on Avenue Q looked different. Susan Holcomb had cut back her hours at the heart hospital from full-time to 32 hours a week, which meant she was home in the mornings for the first time since 2003. The $12,000 balance with the billing department at Lubbock Heart Hospital had been paid in full, in cash, the previous Tuesday. Diego Hernandez had received not only his 2 months of back wages, but a Christmas bonus that covered Sophia's daycare through the end of 2027. Marcus Reed had been offered a full apprenticeship and $4,000 toward tuition at South Plains College, which he had accepted, and which he had not yet been able to tell his mother about without crying. Ethan Holcomb had received word from Texas A&M University that his application for early action had been accepted, and his father had told him, calmly and without explanation, that the engineering program at College Station would be paid for and that he should pack accordingly. Wayne had hired a 3rd apprentice on Diego's recommendation, a 20-year-old young woman named Carla who had been turned down by every other shop in the Texas Panhandle for what they had refused to call sexism. She had begun work the previous Monday. She was, after 1 week, already faster than Marcus. That Saturday morning, at 5 minutes before 8, Wayne picked up the phone in the shop office and called a number in San Francisco that had texted him the previous evening. "Son," Wayne said when Tyler answered, "your grandmother's letter. I want to read you something I never read out loud." Tyler was in a quiet office on the 34th floor of a building south of Market Street, where he often was on Fridays nights and Saturday mornings because he no longer slept particularly well. He listened. Wayne read Sarah Brennan's letter to him over the phone, slowly, in his West Texas voice, with the long pauses that came naturally to a man who had not learned to talk fast and had not seen any reason to start. When the letter was finished, Tyler did not speak for a long time. When he did speak, his voice was steady. "Mr. Holcomb," he said, "can I come back? I want to learn, Saturdays. Whatever you can teach me." "You're a venture-backed CEO," Wayne said. "You don't have time." "I'm a guy who didn't go to his grandfather's funeral. I have time for this." Wayne was quiet for a moment. "Saturdays at 8 a.m., he said. "Coffee's in the break room." "Don't be late." Tyler arrived at Holcomb Restoration the following Saturday at 7:55 in the morning, carrying a thermos of coffee from a place near his apartment that he had remembered Wayne would not have heard of. He had flown in on a red-eye and rented the cheapest car at the Lubbock airport. He was wearing jeans, a plain t-shirt, and work boots he had bought online the previous week and which had not yet been broken in. Wayne was already there. The F-100 was up on the lift in Bay 1. The hood was off, the cab was off, and the body had been carefully marked and tagged and labeled for the process that lay ahead. Diego had set up a workspace beside Tyler's spot, a workbench with hand tools laid out, a notebook, a pair of his old coveralls from 2003 that Wayne had kept on a shelf for 23 years. Tyler put on the coveralls. They were too big in the shoulders. Wayne adjusted the collar for him. "My father's," Wayne said. "He was a bigger man than you. They'll fit better when you have a few months of this on your hands." Tyler nodded. He could not speak. Wayne picked up a wrench and handed it to him. He pointed at a bracket on the engine cradle. "We're going to start here. This is the easiest piece. Take it off. I'll watch." Tyler took the wrench. He fitted it to the bolt. His hands shook slightly. He had not held a wrench since high school shop class 14 years before. He turned the bolt slowly. Wayne watched. Diego in the next bay watched without watching, in the way an older brother watches a younger one without making him feel observed. The bolt came free. Tyler held it up. "Good," Wayne said. "Next one. Some men inherit money, some men inherit watches, some men inherit trucks, and some men inherit a scratch from a deer at dawn because somebody who loved them once cried for an hour over what the scratch had meant." Wayne Holcomb ran the garage on Avenue Q in Lubbock, Texas. 3 generations of his family had run it before him. For the first time in 23 years, he was no longer sure he was the last. The morning sun came up over the corrugated roof of the shop and lit the bays orange. The young man in the 2 big coveralls worked beside the older man who had known his grandfather. The truck waited on the lift, patient as it had been for 58 years, ready to be made new again. Outside, on Avenue Q, the day began.